Hello, I'm Kallie Fell, the Executive Director for the Center for Bioethics and Culture. I'm also the host of a podcast, Venus Rising, and today I'm actually bringing an interview to you all from a woman who reached out to us from Latin America who worked for a surrogacy agency, and she is kind of blowing the whistle on some practices that made her concerned about the work that she was doing. And so we're going to dive in and chat with her today. She had, prior to working for this agency, no knowledge about the surrogacy or IVF industry before starting her employment. And then since then, realized the horrors that lie underneath the industry and wants to expose those. We are going to be calling her Sara. She's operating under an alias, but I'm really excited for you to hear her story from someone who has an intimate knowledge of working in the fertility industry in Latin America. So thank you so much for reaching out to us, for sharing your story. It's important that people continue to expose the industry for what it is. And I know it can be very scary to share your personal story. So I just want to say thank you again for reaching out and thank you for being vulnerable and talking with me today.
Thank you, Callie. I'm super grateful to you and Kirsten and everyone from the center. I really hope my experience working there helps a lot of people. I had no idea prior to being hired. I had no idea what surrogacy entails. I had no idea about anything related to fertility treatments, and I think that, well, in perspective, that was definitely a profile they were going for.
Mhm.
Because then after some time, I noticed a pattern there with the rest of my coworkers, and none of them had any background in the industry at all. So it felt like they were scammed as much as I was. Some of them are still working there. And the psychological profile as well is one of the most important things they analyze when they're about to hire someone.
Can you speak more to that?
Well, they mainly go for women, and especially if they have a complicated background, um, women who are fragile, that come from abusive backgrounds or abusive work environments, um, talking to them in private. I found out a lot of horrible scenarios that they had to go through right before starting working there. And for a lot of them, one of the common places I noticed was that this opportunity to work there in this particular agency was a way for them to escape some of those environments, uh, or even to make their fragile condition a little bit more tolerable.
Hmm.
Uh, so, for instance, um, one of my coworkers couldn't really have a legal job because she was going through a legal battle with an ex-spouse, and so still having a an income of her own gave her the opportunity to have more freedom, financial freedom, to maybe do something that she couldn't do before being hired. And she was brainwashed essentially into thinking that it was good for her, that it was going to give her more opportunities to grow professionally. But in fact, it turned out to be the opposite. She doesn't work there anymore, uh, along with many other coworkers who started and quit a month later, 2 months later. Um, Most of them would quit. They don't, they rarely laid anyone off.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that the company, the higher ups in the company, hired uh, mainly women who were in maybe dire circumstances, looking for employment, who might be struggling financially or struggling in other areas of their lives. And that's kind of the profile of the employee that they sought out. And then there was kind of this revolving door of employees through the organization.
Exactly. And well, the financial situation here is the main focus because nowadays everybody knows around the world that Latin America is not exactly a wealthy area. It varies a little between uh, from country to country, but over here we don't have the best salaries. And even though the whole world is in turmoil right now, Latin America is still struggling a lot with making decent wages and having a decent lifestyle compared to other countries in North America or Europe. So there's a lot of exploitation in the workplace in all industries, to be honest. But well, now I'm here to talk specifically about the fertility industry, but that is something that they definitely used as leverage.
Mhm.
People don't really have a lot of options when it comes to job hunting, and especially if they're getting paid in foreign currency.
Speak to a little bit of how you started working for this agency and speak to a little bit of, um, well, my follow-up question to what you just said then would be, did this agency, did they pay well? Were you compensated well? Were employees treated well? It didn't sound like they were, but were they compensated at least well? So speak to us a little bit about how you started working for this agency and how you were treated as an employee.
Well, I started working there by chance. And to be honest, I was desperate for a job. Um, I had my side gigs, but they weren't making any substantial income month to month. So I was really desperate for any stable income. Um, and well, it did work for a few months, even though at first I wasn't completely convinced about my salary. It was pretty low, and sometime later they raised it, but not too much. And the thing is that with inflation and the the difference between every worker's salaries, because it is not like it was all the same. Um, it became very hard to make ends meet. So I was being burnt out and for very little money because soon enough my rent was eating half my salary, and I I still had no other choice, no other prospective job that I could rely on before quitting or before leaving that place. So it was hard. Uh, at first, they just paint you this dreamy working environment with all the perks and flexibility and so on to make you feel like you're in the best the best job, like it's a family, quote unquote. The typical. That's when you know you're going to be exploited. When they call themselves a family, That's that's the first red flag. Um, and yeah, a lot of extra hours, totally unpaid, um, things that wouldn't be categorized as work per se, more like favors, personal favors,
Hmm.
all the time on weekends as well. And they were just pushing everyone, see who was willing to do it and who wasn't.
Hmm. So definitely taking advantage of the employees by not paying them for work done. And it's funny that you mention about, the family and the language that they use in their work environment because, it's no secret that language is very important. Marketing is very important in the fertility industry. If you Google fertility ads or egg donation advertisements, surrogacy advertisements, there's always a dissociation between the woman carrying the child and the child. Those, they don't, they separate them. My bun, her oven, that type of language. Language is really important. And it sounds like in the employee culture as well, they kind of use this manipulative language, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah. And they're so manipulative, even in circumstances and situations where you would think that they wouldn't need to manipulate anyone. Like personal outings or meetings, dinners, hangouts, that everyone was constantly invited to. And they were trying so hard to portray themselves as the most warm, uh, comforting employers. And when in reality, they were not allowing us to have a life of our own in our free time because it was constant. And those favors, of course, they were never uh, considered in any way. It's not like we were compensated for our time or our efforts. One would think that maybe by going the extra mile, you could get a raise or you could maybe get a better role, but no. And you never really had any chance to consider that because the industry itself is so um, I don't know how to put it, is so wrong.
Yeah.
And they were always on edge. Now, in looking back, I remember my employers being on edge all the time. Like they were expecting to be caught any minute.
Hmm.
So we're always doing things, everything under the table, of course.
What do you mean
We
by
were,
that? Expand on that. What do you mean everything under the table?
well, to start with, I can say none of us, none of my coworkers, nor I were getting any, what's it called? Any paycheck, um, for salary every month. What's the word? Pay stub.
Okay, so
We weren't getting pay stubs at all. Never did. It's
track
not legal.
like your taxes that you paid or to, in the United States we
No,
have,
no taxes. No taxes. Yeah, cash in envelopes. Whether we wanted to have some of that in dollars, some of that in the local currency. That's the way they were going about it. And that's just one example. They were having the same approach with the clinics as well.
So yeah, can you talk to, and again, we want to be very careful, but can you talk to the structure of the organization that you were in um, and the clinics and that whole role? Do you feel comfortable kind of talking about how it was set up?
Yes, well, the agency was the one contacting the clinics, and they would negotiate their numbers, whether that was something they were both good to go with. And then the agency would get clients. They would take them to the I don't know what the word is for this. Like they would recommend the local clinic at the time. They were also checking other clinics, always looking for the best prices.
So when you
And
say clients, that would be what we would call, I hate this term, but like intended parents. These are the people or persons who were looking to hire a surrogate mother.
yes,
Okay.
yes. Well, as you were talking about language earlier, that's the way they would call people and the roles, and how I wasn't allowed to call an intended parent a client. Um, they were like, no, 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 you cannot call them that. They might get upset. Please call them as intended parent, or this and that. I don't know. I don't even like saying egg donors because they're not donating anything. They're selling. So everything
Great.
is a transaction.
I knew
Everything,
this.
yes. Um, so the agency was mediating between the clinic and the intended parents.
Okay. So they're like
And
the go-between.
yes,
Okay. And the clinic, would they be the ones to find the surrogate mothers, or was that part of the agency's role?
the clinic was in charge of that,
Okay.
charge of the egg, egg donors and the surrogates.
Egg
Yeah.
donors. Yeah,
Sellers. I'm gonna just tell them egg sellers from now
that's
on.
fine. Egg sellers.
Yes. And they were quite standoffish when it came to sharing their database, all the profiles they had. And I wasn't sure at the time why they were doing that, but then I found out they were like that with everything. It wasn't just the agency. They were double checking whether we weren't scamming them, or if there was some kind of whistleblower or anything, which is ironic now, isn't
Right.
it?
Now that you're sitting here with me. Um,
Yeah.
so the types of clients, because that's what they are, they're purchasing children by renting and exploiting women in poorer countries. So the
Yes.
clients, they are, and I just want to hit on this because you, as an employer or employee, and your fellow employees are getting paid under the table. You're getting paid, it doesn't sound like fairly for your time spent. But the clients that come in, wealthy, spending quite a bit of money, and then your bosses, were they doing okay? Because I think I want to drill down a point from the side, I often have surrogate mothers who reach out to us and how they're compensated and how little they're compensated compared to every other player in this game. And so I
Yeah.
just want to speak to that too. As on the flip side, employees like yourself are also being exploited while others are raking in quite a bit of money and the types of clients that are using these agencies.
It's some kind of exploception, because everyone is getting exploited except the agency and the clinic. So, and I'm not sure, even maybe, yeah, the lawyers are also in it, of course. Um, yes, I've seen several, I've seen several intended parents at the office because they were coming over to give out samples at the clinic, and they were running tests. Of course, those were very superficial, like the most basic medical tests they run on clients. Um,
Any background checks on clients, do you know?
no, not at all. That's actually one of my main points that I wanted to go over.
Yeah, let's
'Cause
talk about it. We can jump around. Let's do.
no thorough background check of any kind on anyone. Neither the clinic nor the agency run any legal background check on the commissioning parents. Um, well, because they only care about the money. As long as they put the money on the table, then that's it. Um, I even heard rumors about heroin addicts becoming surrogates multiple times.
Wow. So
Not
not
only,
even good medical checks on surrogate mothers.
no, no.
Wow. Sounds like maybe
Only,
self-reported. That's often a case on like egg donor sellers, self-reported history, self-reported medical history.
and well, I was about to mention that most of the clients are coming from Israel, then North America, like the US and Canada, and also from Australia. Very few coming from Europe, and they're very, very wealthy. They are willing to pay for multiple IVF cycles. They don't really care if they have to go for a different surrogate. Um,
In my work,
and
I've heard of especially the very wealthy having multiple surrogate mothers pregnant at once and then kind of deciding once and if an embryo implanted. Did you see that at all or?
I didn't see that when I was working there, but I did hear of it. That it's in some places it's very common to do that.
Mhm.
Mm. Yeah, even the sister agencies they work with, they have a few in different countries, and they're also quite icky uh, in their practice. Uh, there was one of them I was able to go through superficially, of course, but that was more than enough for me to go through some of their database. Uh, it was an ex-sellers list. I was seeing a few profiles, and they were barely educated. You could tell just looking at the profiles and what they were writing. It looked like they were educated enough to read and type. I'm not even sure if they could write by hand at all because they are very young. Some of them are not even in college yet. Um, so they have a very specific target for everything, for employees, for ex-sellers, for surrogates, and even the surrogates, which are very they have to go through a very thorough filter. That's the only thorough thing about this. Um, I heard them being constantly criticized by the agency staff over their ghetto looks.
You did ghetto
Yeah,
looks?
yeah, like poor women, the
What?
way a poor woman looks.
Wow. And you
Yeah.
said that some of the surrogate mothers uh, struggle with addiction. Can you tell us a little bit more about the profile of surrogate mothers?
Well, they're usually, well, one of the mandatory things they ask for is that they need to have their own children before they go for surrogacy, and that they should have completed their family
Hmm.
before they try to be a surrogate. But what they're not saying is that there exists, there's a high chance that there might be something that goes wrong throughout the process. Because I've read a lot of contracts um, and programs, prices, what different agencies offer. And well, just to give you an example of the compensation numbers for a miscarriage, they are offering $1,000 for loss of uterus, 5,000. And that is something that happens.
Right.
And what if that woman thought she would only have one kid and that was it? That would love to have another one and maybe two more, whatever. And now she can't because she lost her uterus and is only getting 5K.
Right. We're just reducing women at this point to their body parts. And it sounds like, from what you're telling me about the profile of egg sellers and they're young and maybe barely able to write, certainly couldn't understand what kind of risks that they would be signing up for. A lot of people who are pro surrogacy talk about, oh, well, a surrogate mother or an egg seller is well aware what they're doing. They're signing up. They're an adult. They know what they're doing. And I think in cases like this, there is absolutely no way they can know what they're doing. One, I'm doubtful that they've read the contract all the way through and doubtful that they completely understand what the contract says. And then to understand that surrogate pregnancies are high risk, that there are increased risks to C-section, to hysterectomy, which is having your uterus removed due to various reasons. There's high blood pressure issues, bleeding issues. Anyway, I'm kind of going on a monologue here, but it really disturbs me to hear that these women are exploited in this. I mean, it doesn't surprise me, but to just hear it firsthand from the other side is just kind of shocking me a little bit more.
Well, yeah, they take pride in bringing the North American standards to Latin America, and all they're doing is bringing exploitation and knowing exactly how to do it so that it looks like everything is legal, everything is done with everyone's consent. But what is that consent based on? Because they're not given all the information.
Right. I read a contract recently that someone had sent me, and it said in the contract that the surrogate mother would educate herself on the risks and harms or of the potential harms. And I was like, hold up. When
Yeah.
in medicine do we ever make a patient, which by the way, these women aren't patients, they're healthy individuals, but they kind of become patients, but they're not patients. Um, when do we allow uh we don't allow that. Doctors must do informed consent. They must educate the patient. The patient isn't educating themselves and then sign off a waiver saying, "Yep, I've done it. I've educated myself on this. I completely understand."
No, no, there's no way. And it's a matter of hit and miss because you hear so many cases of successful surrogacy journeys, and they do see what I did there. They sell it at surrogacy journey, not like you're buying a human being. They're promoting like, oh, this is a wonderful journey to embark on towards parenting. And no, you're just buying a person. And even, and everything, it's so layered. Everything throughout that process, the baking in the oven is so layered and so wrong on so many levels, because even the employees, they work there. I was one of them. They have to deal with such cognitive dissonance,
Mm.
such a cognitive dissonance, because even my female coworkers, they don't know how um how misogynistic they are, and it's so internalized, and that comes with society. I don't think they were that is something they came to the job with, but they take advantage. The employers take advantage of that, of course. It's one of the prerequisites before hiring someone, especially if that someone is a woman.
Mm. It sounds like too that this agency operating in Latin America is part of a larger conglomerate that is operating elsewhere in the world, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, it is.
Hmm. Can you tell me too? So I'm just asking because, a study came out not too long ago that showed that in the United States, um, most most intended parents, commissioning parents that come to the United States to hire a surrogate mother were predominantly single men from Asia over the age of 40. Do you have any inclination or in your time there, what kind of clients, besides being wealthy and from the countries that you mentioned, were these men, women, couples? Because what the fertility industry also tells people, and this is where we pull on the heartstrings of everyone in society, is that these clinics exist primarily for couples who have been trying so long to have a child that this is their absolute only way to have a child. They've been infertile, they've tried all of these other options, but this surrogate mother is going to bring life into the world and is their dream come true. And we're presented with this really sad case of a couple that really wants and desires a baby. So can you tell me, is that the case? Are these couples that are just struggling, do you think?
Yeah, you can find everything, a little bit of everything. Singles, couples, but mostly they were um, gay couples, particularly men.
Mhm.
And I can't remember exactly if there were any Asian couples, but yeah, because the demographics were coming from other places.
Sure. Which our location to Asia is just kind of what sets California. I'm in California, so we're easier. So that I think that's probably why we see that particular. But I was just caught off really by the fact that they're 30, I think it was like 32 or 34%. And it was single men over the age of 40. And I was like, what do these single men want to do with. And I have my hypothesis around that, but we won't get into that with your call because I'm really just interested in what you have to say. So you worked there. This is like your eye-opening to all of this stuff. And you talked to me in your email, you just were sound desperate on it, just like you're so disturbed, so heartbroken over the things that you were seeing, and um um you actually refer to it as human trafficking. And so we've hit on a lot of the points already in the exploitation, but is there any more you'd like to say on that regard? Because I just really want people to realize that this is the buying and selling of children using women who are financially struggling.
Well, after going through pretty much all of your content on YouTube and social media, that was the first thing that I used as confirmation when I wasn't educated enough on where I was working. And I do know now that Big Fertility is human trafficking, because there's nothing ethical nor altruistic about these practices at all. Altruistic to whom? Like um who's on the spot? The clients. They are the ones bringing in all the money, and believe me, even though they're so all over the place about their um, cheap, affordable programs, and that their clients are not, well, no, excuse me, their intended parents are not wealthy, they're like, any common citizen. They definitely are wealthy. I've seen them. I've seen their invoices. I've seen their contracts. The amount of money that it takes to buy a person abroad, because none of the clients were from Latin America. None of them. So there's no way to defend this. And it's so revolting that I just needed just for, just to assure that I would have a little bit of peace of mind to be able to sleep at night. I reached out to you, and I want to do, even though I feel that most times I don't really have the power that I would like to have to do something more substantial against this. I'm really hoping that this reaches a lot of people and that they know this is modern slavery. And no matter how good they make it look, it's still exploitation, it is trafficking, and the lawyers are going to say anything in order to make it sound like a good, wonderful thing for somebody who cannot have a child by natural means. So every single point they're trying to make is is not is not true. Is just manipulation after manipulation. Uh,
Yeah, unfortunately, the folks behind this, the bagged actors here, um, the ones who are profiting off of employees who want to be dedicated, who need work, who are profiting from women who are desperate also for some income and will sign up to be surrogate mothers or sell their eggs. Um, they are wealthy as well. They are powerful, and it is hard to bring them down. Like you said, they are cunning. They cover their tracks. And it sounds like if we have the right person, we could bring them down because they're looking, they're looking over their shoulder. They're agitated, as you say. So maybe someone who's listening to your story can help here, or has an in, or maybe there are others like you who want to share their stories as well. Um, Stories help us understand really what's going on. You testimonies
well,
like this.
just to give you two final examples of how desperate they are for money, they go to such great lengths uh, to get it, such as having their own children exposed at congresses as marketing materials to lure potential clients, like newborns, on a stand trying to lure people to their area, and even going to the extent of asking co-workers of mine, of course the female ones, to pretend they were surrogates and they had a lovely experience, and just casually drop that on a video that is going to be broadcasted everywhere. without any kind of compensation or anything that would motivate them to do that on their own. Um, so they straight out lie. All they do is lying and exploiting.
Wow. And no accountability.
No, not at all.
So, could you just like expand on that for people who aren't understanding or who are listening and this is kind of the first time? So, in a meeting, they're heightened to any type of activity regarding
So
any
yeah,
agency locally to kind of,
because this is an industry that is also changing all the time. So
sure.
regulations or the lack thereof are what is always making them live on edge because they don't know whether they will have to leave any minute, leave the country any minute as soon as they can. So they never really settle down anywhere because they're always on the run. There's always a chance that they might get raided, they might get deported, because the law is always changing and regulations and so on. So
Hmm.
they're constantly on the clock, working alongside their favorite liars, aka lawyers, uh, to find the best way for them to make it work for them so they can, I don't know, offer you a program where you can get the embryos created at a clinic in Latin America and then send it over to North America and have your blonde surrogate with blue eyes, even though that doesn't really matter. That doesn't make any difference on a genetic level. Um, they always go for the models, or at least they try to, with their VIP egg sellers as well. They're going for the best of the best
Sure.
to their eyes. And even with Asian clients, a lot of them, they don't use Asian egg donors to at least have their children look like their own ethnicity.
Hmm.
So they're always coming up with this safe, quote unquote, ways to keep making people and selling people. And that's all there is to it at the end of the day.
Because where you are located in Latin America right now, it's just an unregulated field. There's no right, there's no law against it, but there's no law um legal component that holds those contracts accountable, right? It's just kind of
Yeah.
unregulated.
Yeah, different political parties here are pushing for a law that would make it legal, but that has been postponed for years now, for about 15 years or even longer.
Well,
And that it doesn't ever happen. And actually, the main goal is to make it illegal here, as well as in the rest of the world, hopefully, um, because they are selling this place as the safest, the most um, modern one-stop shop uh, location, one of their best destinations, and it's not. And they claim it's totally legal, but it's not. It's so unregulated. It's a huge gray area. And that gray area, as far as I'm concerned, is not the same as legal.
right. Well, and legal would actually almost be worse too. I actually just came back from Minnesota, which is a state, because here in the United States, surrogacy is patchwork by state. Some states it's legal, some states it's absolutely illegal, and some states are like where you are, where it's just unregulated. It's neither here nor there. And to make it legal is really dangerous because all that does is it provides lawyers that you've already spoke about, and the agency's permission to do this. It makes the contracts enforceable. It does not protect surrogate mothers at all. People think, oh, regulated, that will protect women. It will not. It doesn't protect mothers, and it certainly doesn't protect the children that are being born and sold through this industry. So regulation is not the answer to make it legal. Um,
No.
yeah.
And, and we haven't even touched the what they never talk about is the babies.
Let's
Like
talk about it. Let's talk about
what
it.
what kind of life are these poor humans going to have when they find out that they were bought,
Hmm.
that they were a product manufactured in a lab, and that their parents, whether they wanted or didn't want to know their sex, they had to pay $5,000 for a test specifically for that. Yes. Um, it's something that happens a lot is that they add this charges after the contract has been signed, and without notice they just send that, like even even for the intended parents, they also have to deal with a little manipulation on their side. um so they don't even get to escape that.
Yeah. Well,
And
of course not.
it's like all of this is done for selfish reasons. There was a couple, I'm not gonna say where they were from, but they were a heterosexual couple, and for specific reasons, the woman couldn't conceive, so they came over here, and there were some difficulties when it came to adding her in the baby's birth certificate.
Hmm.
So a way to do that was for her to adopt the baby, but she didn't want to because the surrogate's name was there. So the baby would have like three parents, let's say. So how entitled is that? Like, are you really, really wanting to have a kid that much? But if the woman who facilitated the existence of that baby is in the birth certificate, you're not gonna be there.
Right.
Like,
The
it's
woman who
so,
made your dreams come true. The woman who gave you life. Yeah.
yeah. And I cannot even imagine the psychological trauma that uh, hovers above these children, and what kind of life are they gonna have um, if they were manufactured and born in such circumstances. Um,
Right. Well,
modern
and
science.
sorry, I did not mean to cut you off. You go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say that only nowadays modern science is finding a lot of things that holistic therapies and alternative medicine has been trying to teach us for so long, that the circumstances and the general situation in which a person is born is going to condition them forever unless they become aware of that. If they have the chance, because most people don't have that chance ever, and they will only end up leading a miserable life.
Yeah.
And I would love to be more optimistic about it, but I think we will need some time until we get more stories from these children. The Casablanca spokesperson
Yeah.
from France.
Yeah. Oh,
Uh,
yeah. Hmm.
yeah, Olivia, she's one of the first few people that I heard speaking about her own story.
Yeah.
That's so admirable.
It is.
She, yeah, and hopefully she's inspiring a lot more children and to speak up.
Yeah. Children who know, right? Because that's
Exactly.
assuming that because in the United States, especially in California, the birth mother, the surrogate mother, is not on the birth certificate. The egg seller is not on the birth certificate. So this child may not actually ever know. Maybe they'll do ancestry and find their egg donor, their genetic material, but that won't link them to their surrogate mother. And so, I stand on the right that that children have a right to know their identity, to know their conception story. And so, you know, this is for children who know, and, speak out. How do you feel? Let's hear from you. Um, it sounds terrible to me to not know my genetic makeup and also the woman who brought me into this world. I was just chatting with someone the other day. I have a small child, and we're talking about all of our body parts. She always asks about her belly button, and no, that wasn't like directly attached to me. It was attached to her placenta, which is an organ that my body created. But still, that's like evidence of our connection, right? That I carried her, and that's how we were connected. Not only that, but she knew me for 9 months. She heard my voice. She knew my emotions. She got to know me, and that is we know that that is an important attachment. And we're just stripping babies of this. It makes me absolutely sick to my stomach when I see videos of babies being taken from the surrogate mother, which you never see. You don't see her, that her head's usually chopped off or whatever. Um, and they're placed on a stranger's chest. Oh, it drives me nuts. That doesn't benefit the child. That's for show. This is a
Yeah,
very adult-centered practice, and I can't wait for it to end.
totally. But no, even the way they treat women in general, and especially when it comes to egg donors and surrogates, it's like the word itself is being banned. Woman,
Mm,
I've seen leaflets, I've seen flyers from other agencies, and this one was a specific neck donation agency, and they were referring to their donors as the most altruistic, wonderful individuals,
mm,
not women. Like, I wonder where eggs come from and what's wrong about that word, you
right.
know? And there's this underlying thing about the language they use and how they dehumanize everything. It's so revolting.
Yeah.
And I can even find words right now to to explain all of this and to, I'm trying my best to be as clear as possible and uh, trying to share what it was like for me to be there. And I would have liked to add my help in any way I could, but it was a giant. I felt like there was nothing substantial I could do from the inside other than sharing my story like I'm doing now
Mm,
and bringing this perspective to the table.
yeah. Well, I really appreciate you for doing that. I know it can be scary to tell your story, and that's why we've been very vague. So those who are listening, that's intentional. We want to protect Sara and her family and other people like her who want to come forward as whistleblowers and tell their story, to really expose this industry for what it is. And I just give kudos to you for, you went into this thinking that it was an answer to help with, a job, you needed work, um, you knew nothing about it, and then you've uncovered this dangerous, ugly beast, and then you took action, and then you just, on good conscience, you couldn't stay there and you had to leave. And so I just think that that's worthy of an applaud. So thank you. And then again, thank you for telling your story for others to hear. Um, is there anything else that you can think of that we haven't touched on that you just want to share or expose so that our listeners can be just as informed as possible?
No, I think I went through all of my points, and you also helped me a lot navigating through them because it can be so overwhelming. There's just so much information, so much wrongness in this industry that it's really hard to focus. And even though I didn't have access to the juicy side to it that I could maybe do more good with, still I think this is very important that people uh, need to know. And hopefully, I don't know, this is gonna ripple out and come back in greater good than this.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I hope it lands on the right ears. And I'll be thinking of you and your family, and you'll be in my thoughts, and we'll stay in touch as well. But I want to, again, thank you. I want to thank our listeners and our viewers. If you would like to be in touch with me, you can email me at callie.fell@cbc-network.org. Again, that's Kallie, Kallie .fell, Fell, at cbc-network.org. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook for those who still use it, or I shouldn't say Twitter, I should say X. How dare I? But yes, please reach out if you have comments, questions, or maybe you would like to share your story. We would love to hear from you at the Center for Bioethics and Culture. And again, Sara, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.